Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start. If we do have any questions, I will keep an eye on the chat and we'll respond to those throughout. There will be some time towards the end for discussion, but uh, don't wait. This is intended to be very interactive, so think of this more as a conversation. Um, Going to start. My name is Bob Larsen. I am one of the leaders of the San Francisco Java user group, and we're going to talk about why you should be engaged in community and how it can help benefit your career. Um, so the first thing I'd like to do is basically give you my story, my history, who I am, and why I care enough about this to talk about it. So we're going to go back to 2006. At the time, I was working as a Linux sysadmin and was attending a local Linux user group. And the gentleman whose company was hosting the Linux user group also hosted the Java user group and invited me to come. And I started attending the Java user group. And at first, I would say 90% of what was said was over my head. I couldn't understand what people were talking about. It was terribly confusing. But I kept going because it was fun and because I enjoyed the conversations I was having with the people who were there. Um, and it was probably 6 months, 6 or 9 months after that, I realized that that ratio had kind of flipped. That now I was able to understand and follow along with 90% of what people were saying. And so simply by being in that environment and talking to people, I had leveled up my experience and my understanding dramatically. Um, about that time, I hit a point in my job where I had automated most of my sysadmin work. And at one point, I realized that I hadn't actually done any work in a couple weeks. And I figured if I didn't do something, they were going to fire me. So I looked around the company and I found a problem and I started writing an application to solve it. And because I'd been attending the jugs, I wrote that application in Java. I ran into a lot of problems and a lot of things that I didn't know how to overcome because I had no formal training in writing software and really had just kind of entirely self-taught and kind of picked all this stuff up as I was going along. So I would write down a list of questions and then after every user group meeting, I would spend frequently hours talking to the jug lead and I would ask him these questions and we would have these really long conversations where he would give me advice and tell me what to go look for. And that continued for a couple years. Um, and I was able to finish that project. Wrote a proof of concept and then showed it to my boss, who was so happy with it that he insisted I immediately put it into production, which was its own special set of fun. But that's another talk. Um, in 2009, the jug lead, the same person who'd been mentoring me, convinced me to fly cross country to San Francisco um, to attend a conference called Java One. And while I was at this conference, introduced me to a huge number of people. And these were people that, when I had a question and I searched the internet, they were writing the articles that answered my questions. These were the people who were the experts in the tools that I used and frequently actually wrote a lot of the tools that I used. I recall sitting next to one of the key NetBeans contributors, and having a beer, and he pulled out his laptop and was showing me the new features that he was adding on the flight to San Francisco to attend the conference, and was really amazed at the level of acceptance that I received having no fame, no reputation, and coming into this community. Um, One of the people that um, I was introduced to at this conference was a lovely lady who was at the time the community manager for Java.net. After the conference, we continued chatting. We wound up actually dating. And then in 2010, I moved cross country to the Bay Area, continued to work here. A few years later, we got married, and the same jug leader who was a mutual friend and had introduced us came out and actually officiated our wedding. Um, I continued to work in the area. I was an independent consultant for a very long time. I've worked for a few different companies. I've started with SF Java as a co-lead in early 2018. So I've been doing that for a couple years now. And that's been a tremendously positive experience. So I'm I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm certainly not here to say that, your experience will mirror my own, but I am living proof that I would not have the career I have today. I would not have nothing about my life would be what it is today were it not for these user groups. So there's a tremendous amount to be gained by participating, by showing up and taking part of these in these events. And now I'd like to go into a few different ways that you can be engaged with the community and what they can bring to you specifically. So the first is attending user groups and events. This one is for all the reasons I just said, very near and dear to me. Um, there's all sorts of great tech. I think that's on the surface. You learn about things that you probably wouldn't know existed otherwise. Tech is too large of an ecosystem for anyone to actually follow, for any one person to understand all of it. Even if you restrict it to Java or even a subset of Java, it's still too much for one person to follow all of it. And one of the great things about these types of talks is that you can gain some level of exposure to a new tech, to a new technique, to something you didn't know about, and you don't have to remember all the details. And frankly, I wouldn't recommend even trying to remember all the details, but knowing the gist of what a thing is, so that if you're ever in a use case, if you're ever in a situation where you need that thing, you know what to search for, you know what the options are. That's very, very large. It's a really big benefit to have. Um, there are also, you meet a lot of great people, right? These are places to be to network. Right? I can tell you that the people who present at user groups or at conferences, right? These are people, they're doing this because it's what they love. It may also be their job, but you don't get a job like this unless you're talking about something that you love. This is a passion. If you're talking about it, it's a passion. And they would absolutely love for you to come up and talk to them about it after the session, right? You're not going to be bothering them. You shouldn't be shy. Just go up, introduce yourself, have a conversation. Um, and you never know who's going to be looking for somebody at these events. Very often you have recruiters who are at these events or the speakers themselves may have openings. You never know what these people are. So have these conversations and take the opportunity to network. This is a very rare chance to ask questions of experts, even if it's slightly off topic for whatever session they're giving, whatever they're talking about. Going up and having a conversation afterwards about a thing and asking them these questions is an opportunity that you don't get very often. I have, on more than one occasion, when I got in the weeds around a specific piece of tech, asked someone that I knew that I'd met at either at a user group or at a conference if we could go out and have a beer. And for the price of a beer, I got some of the best advice from global experts. And that's something that you don't have many opportunities for that without extreme cost. Um, you will make friends. And that's true of any social event. I'm not necessarily saying this is the only way to make friends, but you form these relationships over time. You show up consistently at these events, whether they're user groups again or conferences. I have a large number of a group of friends, some of whom may be here today. I'm not sure. I can't see who's here. Um, but a lot of them that I only see once a year at conferences. And that's fine. We're still great friends, and when we see each other, it's it's a very good thing. Um, Lastly, at a lot of user group meetings, there's free food, there may be swag. It's it's a benefit. It's probably shouldn't be the only reason you do these things, but it's there and it is worth mentioning. Um, Going beyond attending at these events, I think I would strongly recommend speaking at these events, especially if you can start on a smaller user group, right? If you're in a small, the first user group I was attending was in a small town. There were only some meetings 2 or 3 people who showed up. Others we got as high as 10 or 20. Um, but this is a really low pressure way to start speaking about tech. Um, I can guarantee you that every person in this room has something that they can teach to and learn from every other person in this room. So there is something that you will have to say that people will be interested in. You just have to look at your experience and find what that thing is. And with these smaller groups, it's a much more forgiving crowd. It's if you don't do a great job, they'll give you the feedback and they're not going to be rude about it or hostile. It's a very nice environment, and it's a way to develop a skill. A lot of engineers are not good at speaking, and having the ability to speak and to express your thoughts clearly, especially around tech, is a valuable skill and will make you more employable. Lastly, when you talk about things, you do a tremendous amount of research and preparation, and you learn a tremendous amount about the thing that you're talking about. I have several times, I would say probably two-thirds or more of the talks I've given, I have chosen to talk about a thing because I want to learn about a thing. And it gives me the drive and the impetus that I need to go and do the research, to go and develop a project. I wanted to do some work with machine learning, and so last year at Code One, myself and a couple of my colleagues we wrote a machine learning algorithm that would fly a drone autonomously, would receive an image and tell it how to fly to fly at a goal. It was not a particularly impressive result. I certainly wouldn't recommend going and writing a machine learning algorithm from the ground up if you have a practical use case for it. But as a learning exercise, I learned more in that process than I have in doing a lot of other things. It's my personal favorite way to learn things. Um, Another option around that that's a little bit lower stakes, not everybody's comfortable, is to interact with a community online, right? It's a lot of the same benefits. You're interacting with a group of people who share similar interests. You're you've got the exposure. It's a little bit less because you don't know these people personally, but you do have the ability to ask questions of experts. And again, most of the people who are active in these communities, this is a passion. They enjoy answering these questions and talking about these things. Um, Also, stepping up and finding the answers to these questions is a great way for you to learn yourself, to level up your skill set. It's a much lower investment than preparing a talk, right? It's, maybe a half an hour or an hour's worth of work and research instead of the hours and hours that it takes to do a much longer and more in-depth presentation. But it is a fantastic way to develop those skills. Um, the step beyond that would to be writing more long form articles, blog posts, or other types of articles for magazines or websites, or there's all kinds of stuff out there. And the last point is that these communities don't form on their own, right? It takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to maintain them. And if you're participating and you're contributing to the community, that will get you noticed and people will appreciate that. And it's a really good place for you to showcase the knowledge that you do have, to demonstrate what you know, again, in a more public setting that an employer could view. Um, and I think the last specific example I have is contributing to open source projects. I think this is a fantastic way to participate and to level up your career, right? If anyone can contribute, regardless of skill level, regardless of what you know, there's something you can do. If you find a bug, you can report it. You can write documentation. You can write examples or tutorials. You can make minor tweaks to behavior. There are tickets and there's work that needs to be done across skill levels and across levels of effort. So everyone has something that they can do. This is the best way if you want to actually understand how a tool or a framework or something works, actually working on it, getting under the hood, playing with it, understanding how to test it, understanding the the test structure that they use and the architecture of the system will give you a level of understanding that you cannot get any other way. And while you're there, you can make the changes that are most important to you. Maybe you want something to behave in a specific way, and it's not going to get prioritized by other people because they don't view it as important, or they don't think it is as important as you do. Um, Maybe it's a corner case. There's a lot of things there. But you don't have to wait for somebody else to decide to fix a thing. You can go in, you can submit a PR with a change, and you can fix the thing yourself. And that's going to help to make your favorite things even better. In that process of submitting PRs, you will get feedback on your code, on the style, on the architecture, the way you design the feature. You know, there will be feedback cycles there. Feedback is always a positive. Don't always have to take feedback you receive from someone as gospel, but if anyone is willing to give you feedback, you should take it and at least consider it very carefully, because that's really valuable stuff to have, and that's telling you or giving you some insight at least into what you can how you can improve, where your opportunities are. Um, through contributions, again, if you contribute consistently to a project, you will get noticed, you will gain reputation, you will become an expert in that thing. And becoming an expert is very likely to get you to make you more hireable for organizations that use that thing heavily. Most major projects have one or more organizations that do most of the contributions. And one of the best ways to get noticed by those organizations and to get into to the pipelines is to contribute to those projects and to show them what you're capable of. And you're not limiting yourself to showing one specific employer what you can do. This is a very public forum where you are putting your work on display, and you can point to this work as part of your resume to show the skills that you have and to convince people that an employer that you can bring value to their organization. So I in conclusion, I don't actually have any more slides. So we'll go back to the beginning. In conclusion, I would say that participating in community is a very valuable thing to do. It can bring a lot of value to you personally, and it's something where you can also share a lot of value with others. Right? I am, the reason for all the reasons that I laid out in the initial slide. Um, right, the Java user groups have meant a lot to me, and I've chosen to stay very active in there in the hopes that I will continue to learn a lot and to meet people, as well as to help other people on the process. And you can do both of those things at the same time. It's a very unique opportunity in that regard. So I don't have So I have a question is how do you find a good open source project to contribute to if you want to develop a specific skill? Um, that that is a very good question. And unfortunately, I'm not going to have a good universal answer to that. I think if you want to learn about a specific type of technology or a specific technique, finding projects that use that technique should be fairly straightforward. Um, I'm thinking of something like machine learning or a broader category there. Um, if you want to speak to specific coding techniques, testing techniques, or philosophies in or design styles or architecture styles, I don't have a very, again, a universal way to do that. I think I would recommend looking at the projects that you yourself use. One of the most important things for any engineer to have is a good understanding of their user. And so if you can walk in the door with that understanding, it's going to be a lot easier. It would also be very valuable to look at the things that you use or the things that you'd like to change, and to see if they're going to give the value. Um, do you have something specific that you're looking for? So there are, well, yeah, cloud and machine learning are both very nebulous. There are numerous machine learning frameworks that are available publicly, that are open source, that you can look at. There are a lot of different types of machine learning. So doing some basic research and a fair amount of trial and error may be the best thing I can recommend for that. In terms of cloud, um, in terms of the cloud stuff, you know, there are there are a lot of frameworks, there are a lot of open source PaaS solutions or open source projects that will stand up clouds or project frameworks for writing applications to run on clouds. So you could look into, um, Cloud Foundry would come into mind as an open source solution for actually running the cloud. In terms of applications, frameworks for applications that run on clouds, I would look at Cloud Native Compute Foundation or some of these organizations and look through their projects. Okay. We have any other questions or? Okay. I'm not seeing anything. I'm going to be here and available if anyone would like to chat or has further questions. That's fine. I believe I'm here for quite a while. I will probably just leave things alone and we'll mute the microphone for a little while. But feel free if there's anyone would like to say anything, bring it up in chat, and we'll come back online. Thank you, everyone. I do have suggestions for growing a user group, a lot of them. Um, I think we now live in an age where recording sessions is a huge thing, and most user groups are now virtual. I know SF Java is entirely virtual due to the COVID situation. Um, a few things I would very strongly recommend are consistency. Having regular events and having them without fail um, are it can be a very challenging thing to do. But if people get used to going to this thing every month, that's a very valuable thing. I would also, since if you have the capability to stream the the sessions, that can be very valuable for bringing people into the group. At SF Java, we would generally have, I'd say, 30 to 50 people in person, and another 10 to 15 would participate over the stream. And the stream is not a substitute for the in-person conversations. I don't think it brings as much value, but it's a much lower barrier to entry. I think that's a great way to reach out to people and to get the word out. And in San Francisco, there's a lot of competition when it comes to user groups. And so, there are on any given night 5 or 6 events that may be of interest to someone. So, you have to be you have to make sure that people are aware of what you're doing and what's going on. We also record all of our sessions and publish them. I think that's a huge thing. Um, Another thing that I found that works very well for us is coordinating with other user groups in the area, especially around speakers. If you have a speaker who's traveling from outside the country or outside of the area, it may be difficult for them to convince their company to pay for their travel to come and speak at one user group. But if you can find 2 or 3 user groups that they can speak at together in very close timing, that makes it a lot easier to bring in bigger name speakers. Um, that's all I can think of off the top of my head. Um, Although I would imagine a lot of our organizers probably may have input onto this as well. Um, as the Java user group in Brazil is or was, I believe, still is the largest in the world. Um, it takes a fair amount of work, and having connections with speakers and people you can ask to come in and do these presentations is very helpful. I have seen the user group that I started with very often. The jug lead was giving the presentation month after month after month, and that can get exhausting. And I would not be able to sustain that long term. I can fill in and give a presentation here and there if I have to, but I certainly couldn't do it month in and month out. There is a Google group for jug leaders, which would be a great place to reach out and ask for more details around that. If you want to send me a message either here or on Twitter, I can give you a link to that group so that you can get set up and get more advice from people who have much more experience with this. If you don't mind me asking, where are you from? Ah, okay. Yeah, I would imagine well, everything's pretty spread out in Texas, but would imagine there are active groups that are reasonably close by that you can work with and try and coordinate speakers with. So if you have a speaker that comes and hops from group to group, um, We have 3 in the Bay Area, and we've done that several times when we have people traveling. It's it is a very tough thing to grow, and I think every user group is in that space, frankly. We all we all want to find things to do. I don't think there's any magic trick. I think it's just a matter of consistency being there and then trying to make it as easy as possible for people to participate. And on a personal level, pacing yourself so that you don't burn out. Like that was one of the hardest things for me. When I first started, I wanted to do all the things, and you can do all the things for a few minutes. Hello, Mary. Yeah, I think I think that happens with everybody. We've plateaued. Like I said, we usually have 30 to 50, well, before lockdown, 30 to 50 in 30 to 50 in person, and then another 10 to 15 on a stream. Um 40 is really good for online. I don't I don't know that we've had, I think we may have had a couple meetings that where we got up to 40, but well, yeah, but registration is well, when we were doing the in-person stuff, because I was dealing with the food orders, we would divide by 3. It's really frustrating to see how many people will register, and yeah, exactly. Like 2 out of 3 will register and then just not show up the night of. That's half is better than what we've seen or what I've seen. So that seems to be, it seems like you're doing well. What do you do to publicize this? Do you have any secrets? Yeah, I think that's fairly standard. But you're doing well if you get half to show up in person. That's impressive. That's a really, really good idea. I hadn't I hadn't thought about that, but that is a fantastic idea because I feel like that is the thing that I mean the presentations are always great, but it's the chatting with people before or after that I really miss about having the meetings in person. I think that's a fantastic idea. I may suggest to yeah, I'd love to be in a situation when we can be back in person, but we're not there. So, um, I will suggest to Peter that maybe we start trying that and keep the stream open until everybody drops off. I've not, no. Okay. Good luck, Mary. Thanks for stopping by and giving us some input. So I've not tried the networking feature here. This is the first time I've ever used Hopin, and so far it seems to be really really nice. It seems to be well suited for what it is. I'd be interested. We've been using Zoom, and Zoom works well, but this isn't. These types of meetings are not really what it was intended for. I think something like this may be a better fit for a group. It's just going to be a question of logistics and cost and things of that nature. So how does the looks like the networking feature just randomly pairs you with someone else? Ah, okay. Well, have a good day. Um, thanks for stopping by. I've enjoyed chatting with you. Oh, nice. I will take a look at it as soon as I'm done here. Have a good day, Scott.